back to Indie Housing Market. I'm Kyle Morris with Morris Property Group and FC Tucker, and today I have with me.
Hi guys, Shelly Walters with FC Tucker as well.
Hey, I'm Kyle.baker with FC Tucker as well.
So Kyle is in the Carmel office, and he's been doing it a little bit over a year, and we wanted to get a newer agent's perspective on things today. I met Kyle really early on, and so as somebody who's been in it a little while, I know you've been in it a little bit longer than me, but so it's like, what makes a new agent good, or what do you think is going to make them succeed? And I'll just be honest, like, you can't tell 100%, but there's markers within people that I think where you can see they have a higher likelihood of success, right? Like, I don't know everything behind the scenes of like personal finances or home life or whatever that may be, debt, that comes into play to be successful. But there are a lot of markers I think you see of dedication, hard work, going up to people and asking questions. Even though you don't know them, you just know that they're an agent and they have a little bit more time than you. And asking those questions, most importantly, like communication and follow-up, like those are so huge for a new agent. Like when I see those things, that I get really encouraged. Like for myself, even this weekend, I had some open houses, and when I'm not getting communication back on, how many people are in the just those things, and like I never had that experience with Kyle, and so like I've always believed in Kyle. A, I've told him that, but B, even more so behind the scenes to try to encourage. I just thought he would be really successful, and he has been. So, and I just wanted to bring him in.
Say sometimes I get asked to talk about to new agents or people thinking getting in the business, and what would be what I would say thoughts if you're going to get into this business is to know that it is a business.
Yes.
So many people get into this and it's like they literally think it's going to be a hobby, and they don't look at it as a business, including whether or not you do an LLC or a Schedule C, whether or not you all kinds of things, how you run it, but it is your business that you're going to either sink or swim from what you do. And the mentality of some people out there don't have that when they're going into the business. They just look at it as a hobby, and that's, I think, in the very beginning, the people who look at it as a business and the people look at it as a hobby, these people probably don't have much of a chance.
Yeah.
Because it's not a hobby.
Well, and it's really weird. Like you come in, you interview, and you come to a location, an office, so it feels like a W-2 job, I guess. Right. So like it's really weird to wrap your head around it. I educated myself like around 9 months is when I really started to pivot and become a CEO and a business owner. Created an LLC, and then I pivoted to an S Corp and all these other things, and kind of learned and had different accounts and all that stuff. And so like I really do try to teach newer agents, because I didn't feel like I had much help with that stuff, mainly because I didn't know, so I didn't even know to ask. And so like I really try to educate, like how do you be fiscally responsible as an agent when you're new and all these other things. And you've just gone through all of it.
So what do you wish somebody would have told you from the very beginning that you kind of started to experience and go, nobody told me this?
Yeah. No, there's so much to learn, it's like you don't even know what to ask.
That's very true. I feel like there's a lot going on. Everyone tells you it's going to be difficult, and I kind of came into this with expectations that I would be successful, and I think I've done all right. It's just, it is difficult. I think I underestimated how difficult it would be, whether it's finding clients, whether it's educating clients, whether it's being, their personal counselor. There's just so many aspects to us. It's not just buying and selling houses. It's not saying you want this one, this is the price. There's so much more that goes into it. And so
therapy.
It really is. It really is. And it's therapy without trying to change somebody's opinion, even though it may be right or wrong. You can't, it's not like, I'm not selling cars. It's not like I'm trying to sell you this. It's
right. We talk about that all the time. We do not work on a basis of trying to sell ever.
Yeah.
We're there as a counselor guide to, just tell you what we know, what we think you should know that would help you make your own informed decision. But a lot of the times, I get a really big feeling that I'm right. Like, you really shouldn't buy this house. And it's a really weird conversation to tell your buyer, let's not buy this house. And they look at you like, I kind of like it. And I'm like, well, can we talk about all the things? Because I'm there to, I don't care if I sell it. I want to make sure they have, the proper information they need to make that decision.
Yeah, I know Kyle and I have had that conversation in the past where, he goes into a house, he might preview it before bringing clients in. He says, oh, I'm really excited about this house. I go look at it, and he's like, this isn't the one. and it builds a lot of trust with your clients, because I'm not just trying to sell any property to you. I want to sell the property that's perfect for you.
Right.
I'm not just looking to make a sale.
People get excited about just the home buying process.
Right.
And you go through like, hey, this is what we're looking for. And then they just start seeing stuff. And then they're like, ooh, let's go look at this one. And I'm like, this is a ranch and we need a 2-story with a basement. I don't care that it looks really cool.
You told me you do not want water in the back and it's got a pond in the back, no fence. And just, trying, well, let's see it anyway. But
which I'll still go look at it.
I know, if you have
but we
to.
can just go be like, hey, come on, this is what we're trying
We'll
to do.
start out on that conversation. The reverse, I think, is true as well. Is just when you think it's the right house for them.
Oh yeah.
I think that's even harder because you don't want to say them to feel like you're forcing a house down them. But when they've told you exactly what they're looking for, and we do this every day, we know the market and we know what we have seen in the past and what we know what could possibly not come along again in the future for a long time. When that house hits and they're like, I don't know. Can we talk about everything you've told me you wanted in a house and that we've been looking for 6 months, and if you wait 2 days, this is probably going to sell. I feel like I'm pressuring them, but I also know the house they want is right in front of them.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? So yeah.
And I think on the flip side too, where they might kind of like what Kyle was referring to, is they'll send me a property and I know this isn't the property they want, but they want to go see it anyway. And of course we go see it and it turns out to not be it. And so then the next time it comes around, it's like, how do I tell them this is not the one without doing this whole thing all over again and going to view the property? Especially, any properties that's, local, but some of the listings that I've had, or some of the clients I've had, I might have to travel an hour and a half to go look at this house that I know is not going to be up to spec for them. It's like, this isn't the right house for you, but I don't want to seem like, I don't want to show this house. I'll show it to you.
Right.
But based off of the information that you've given me, it's a tough boxes. Yeah, it's a tough conversation to have.
It really is.
You get better at it though, but even it just feels odd sometimes, because not just like I've looked at thousands of houses, and not just like Hamilton County. Marion County. Louisville, Richmond, Warsaw. Avon, Columbus, Brown County. You name it. I just have a really good read on like what you're gonna see within a price range, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just it is hard. It is very hard. I had one that we went through that and I could just tell where we're at, and we took 3 years and it worked out beautifully. It just did, right? We looked at houses that we didn't know we needed, but that we had a luxury there of no timeline. It's when a timeline gets thrown in, I think, is when I start to have the conversation differently, because it's like, hey, we need to find a house in like 90 days, and I'm like, this is it. We have a very limited timeline at this point. So
what else do you think, now that you're in this market? I think it's really hard to ask somebody new in the business because you don't know what to compare it to. So we can't say, how do you think it's different? Because you can't answer that question. But just what do you think of the market and selling real estate? And what do you think hearing what people are saying? Does it just feel normal to you and you're just working through it?
Well, I say normal. It is my normal because I don't know any different. Now, I've bought houses. I bought several houses before I got in the business. I bought in 2018, 19, 20, and 21. So I kind of knew, I had an idea
I'd like to be your agent if you're buying that off.
So I knew how difficult the market was, but it's completely different when you're in it selling. So this is my normal. I would say I'm fortunate that as difficult as it is now in the past year, I think it's been better for newer agents because at least you had the opportunity to have offers looked at versus 2021, when if you weren't all cash and you weren't X amount over list, then you were getting tossed to the side. And
and to be a new agent in that time frame, to your point, and to be confident enough to tell somebody they need to write $30,000 over list price out of pocket, that's tough. And to be a list agent during that time frame was more difficult too, because we talk about it all the time, like nothing changed about my business regardless how quick something was selling. But if you're new, you didn't understand, like, being a listing agent is there's just a process to it, there's a timeline to it. You just don't throw it out there. And I don't think a lot of agents who came into the business around 2020 kind of know that. But so you came in this kind of pivoting area, so interest rates when you came in were probably, I trickled up to the 5s, now they're in the 7s, right? So they were already had gone up, and some of the market had started to, had like an emotional reaction to the
You
interest
just
rates.
started last June?
So yeah, so they were like in the 6s, maybe low 7s.
Because they started coming up in March, right before that. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
Oh, this June.
No,
Last
no,
June.
Last June, but I
June,
thought
yeah.
we had a podcast, we always constantly said how in December they were 2.9.
that was the
year.
year before.
Man.
That's just how long we've been doing it.
Wow.
Yeah, last March is when interest rates really started to trickle up, and then
So
and then
we're
last
in September, we've been, okay.
yeah last
Wow.
August is when 2-1 buy down started to come around really
Yeah.
heavily,
Yeah.
which is kind of just fallen off the radar again for some reason, and I don't know why. but-
I don't think so. We had a conversation with David a couple weeks ago here on the podcast.
Well, I mean, as far as education and how much is being used,
oh
not
yeah,
that,
nobody
like,
knows how to do it
If
because,
you used one, you could get a house in a heartbeat. You
so
just-
you're learning all these tricks that nobody
did.
understood about, but the 2-1 buy down, I mean, I literally just tried to buy a house for a buyer or a client of mine and put the 2-1 buy down in it, and I talked to the agent about it. They rejected it, and he told me he'd look at it and he understood it, but he rejected our offer because he said, I don't understand what you're asking. And I'm like,
I think
okay,
it
you
helps.
need to be educated, like you're learning all these things, but these are parts of the deal now.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, that's not good.
You almost have to quantify it as a dollar amount now. You can't just say 2-1.
I did, I
Yeah.
gave the
Yeah.
exact amount. It was
Really?
written out by David, yes.
This is about
I
as
actually
clear cut as
learned
it
the
gets.
2-1
Yeah.
buy down from you guys, and I did 2 of them this year. One was to help the client get a more attainable payment for the
Mhm.
first 2 years, and the second was actually to save a deal. So it was, I didn't fully understand. I mean, I understood how it worked, but I didn't really understand how the money was there and where it came from.
Right.
And then you guys went to a deep dive and it said, oh, this makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I used
Good,
that.
glad
yeah.
that helped. Yeah, that's kind of what we do the podcast for, is we're trying to bring on, the questions for the masses of everybody listening so that they can use this information, especially the stats. The stats is something like, anybody who doesn't want to pull everywhere, if they've got a listing coming up, hopefully our stats that we give once a week will help you to
Help
know
people.
the market. Because it does helps
It
us,
does.
man. We can't believe the difference that
But
it's helped us.
They just did a call and they were saying rates are going to be down in the spring, and like I just think that's for what they're predicting, that seems like a disproportionate jump. That's going down as quickly as we came up. I do think rates are gonna go down based off of everything that we're seeing, but basically they're saying like the time to buy is now, the time to list is now because inventory is so low, which I would agree with anyways. I think there's always this fear of selling in the winter, but because there's less buyers, but the people who are buyers are motivated buyers.
They're real.
They are. I mean, I sold my house 9 years ago in November. I mean, it was on the market for like a week and a half or something like that. We did just fine on it, but it's because we had committed buyers out there during that season, and I think people don't think that.
If the
happens.
sellers and the buyers don't do it now, like you're talking about that 2021,
Mhm.
we're going right back there. I have a feeling. I mean, when this breaks loose, it's gonna break loose bad, and we're back to overlist and stuff. So we keep saying now's the time to buy.
Inventory's going down.
And it goes back to that same conversation where I'm trying to educate but not change somebody's mind. But it's like, we can see where this is most likely going, but the general population is, oh, I want to wait until the rates drop.
Right.
Well, yeah, you and everyone else. And so
Right.
what happens when they do drop and everyone's now competing, and no, you're not going to get these concessions, or you don't
Yeah.
have the advantage.
Yeah, the concessions right now. See, it's so good to hear. Like, you're talking more at 1 year
Mhm.
than a lot of people talk about in been 3 or 4 years. Just you're keeping up and you're diving into it. I can tell you're keeping up with what you need to know in this market today.
We just did one. Concessions matter a lot right now, especially with the active buyers we have, I feel like, right? Because they're people who kind of were on the sidelines for a couple of years. So we did one with closing cost assistance, but we sold it above list price so that the sellers still net, because the key was the closing cost assistance, right? Like that's what we're like,
Right.
we will do this, meet us in the middle on that, right? And so, and we've had a lot of luck with that, but I don't know, inventory is so low, and based on like what you say, like you said, like you gotta educate people, but there's all this information out there that is legitimate information, it's just being framed poorly, right? So like the one I see all the time is sales are down this year compared to last year.
Yeah, I was just on one of the TV stations.
But the problem when you look at it is there's less inventory, less is selling. If I got 10 cars to sell instead of 20 cars to sell, right? Like I only sell 2 of them. I have less to sell, so it's gonna appear like sales are down. But as far as like how the price and everything is performing, it's still the same. It's just, of course, there's less to sell, so less is selling. Not that it's not selling and it's not getting list price or whatever it may be. But when you just read it, nobody takes the time to go into like, kind of like dive into and tear apart the information that's provided in that to know what they're actually talking about. It's just like sales are down this year compared to last year.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, because there's less to sell. But we're actually, if you look at the numbers are pretty equal.
Yeah, if you look at percentages.
Yeah.
So what else do you think is when you're coming into real estate that you didn't know, you just like had no idea? Like,
Well, I think I wouldn't say that I'm an investor per se, but I decided a couple years ago that I wanted to acquire a couple properties. So I think I had a lot of insight coming into it, which is why I kind of thought that I would hit the ground running. That was kind of the case. But I had a lot of education. I've read a lot of books long before I got my license. I think the hardest part was just that communication, the relating to the clients and trying to figure out exactly what they need, where they need it, how soon they need it, and trying to combat with all of their personal needs and wants. And I think it was more of that personal touch that was missing.
do they still teach you about DISC, D-I-S-C?
Mhm.
So that was a surprise to me to learn, and I have a psychology degree from Purdue, but the DISC idea of mirroring your client and getting to know what, because for me, the hardest people were D's, because, sorry, I'm a high I. So my first couple of times across from the D's, I'm like, whoa. And to just be, learn about that's a real thing, so that you can mirror their style and help them, because like you said, counseling is a huge part of it.
It is. And then just like kind of time management. And it's not necessarily like not doing something, but sometimes it's slowing down on what you're doing. Because I know what you referenced several times being the Pop-Tart agent. I mean, I was running everywhere. I had the time, so I wanted to show every property. I wanted to do everything that I could, and I found that I wasted my time a lot. Well, I don't want to say wasted my time. It was very educational.
Because this gets to what you said earlier, is your client says, I want to go see 123 Main Street. You don't even look it up and worry about it. Like, I'll be there at 2 o'clock, see you then. That's a Pop-Tart agent. Whereas you now know, pull it up and go, it only has 2 bedrooms. You absolutely need 4, and you have that conversation, and you don't go see it.
It's got a tenant till May or something.
Yeah, right.
Or it's an FHA client, and they have subfloor showing, and it's like, well, this isn't going to pass.
Right. Yeah. So that's the Pop-Tart agent. So that's a really good point.
But as you get busier, so you're conditioned to be a Pop-Tart agent, because that's what you want to do. You want to be busy. You want to do all these things, and then as you get a capacity, because you have more and more coming, it is hard to pivot. I don't think a lot of agents do, of like understanding how to time manage better and have an understanding of time to navigate all the admin work and the business work on top of just the client stuff that you have to do. So that goes back to being like a CEO and understanding that you're running a business. And but it's hard. It was a transition period for me. I bet it took me 18 months, honestly. And that was a rough 18 months because I was doing everything nonstop. It was just a lot to deal with. And you just get to a pain point where you're just like, I can't.
Do you know what?
Or you make a mistake.
What I would, that'll teach you.
Yeah.
What I was told once that pivoted me, because I was always like, somebody calls you and says they want to list their house, and then you talk to them and it's, Tuesday afternoon at 5, and they say they would like to list it, and they ask, can you come tomorrow at 10 a.m.? And you were going to go see your granddaughter's play. And I'm like, yes, I'll be there. Because everybody was like, okay, they're not going to ask me for a 12 o'clock, or I can't come back with, can I do it at 12? Because they won't use me. My whole mentality was, they tell me what time they want to do it. That's the only time they can do it. That's why they're asking me. Yeah. And I have to be available or I'm losing the client. That was my mentality. And then somebody came to me and said, you have an appointment. And I said, no, I just wanted to go see my granddaughters. And they're like, you have an appointment.
Yeah.
And when I could learn that my family, my health, my dog needed a walk, I needed to sit down and put my feet up, I'm not feeling well, whatever, I have an appointment. When I was learning that, when the next time somebody asked me to do it at 10 in the morning and I wanted to go see something, I'd say, I'm sorry, I have an appointment at 10, I should be done about 11:30, would any other time that day work? 99.999% of the time they would say, absolutely, can you do it? We can do one.
Yeah.
My time management just went through the roof at that point.
The big
Because I
one
knew
is-
what I was doing on a daily basis, but then 2021 came along and we had to jump and
Everybody had to
become
go,
a Pop-Tart agent, like, oh, there's a house that hit the market, we gotta go see it now. I mean,
It's
like,
gone in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
almost wanted to put a siren on the top
That's
of my
when
car.
we got really good at, we have like a very dedicated, structured timeline to list houses, and that has helped exponentially. And so I was talking to a new agent the other day, like, this is how we do it, and there's a structure to it, and there's reason behind it, because I need this turnaround on photos, and we list on this day for this particular reason. And so, it helps me exponentially. But what it does, and what you don't realize when you're newer, but you and I have talked about it, so you're different, but it gives the client, the seller, structure as well. Because it's
and they need it.
they need it, man. Because it's like, what am I doing? I've got to clean up. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. Like, we've got 2.5 weeks. We'll be okay. What are you doing this weekend? Let's knock it out. Do this, this, and this first. And then we have the next weekend still, and you can game plan it, and it removes the stress. So, but when you're new,
Well, it
You
removes
just
the
want
stress,
your
but it
phone to
also
ring.
gives you your
Yeah.
time back because you're not running like crazy trying to get everything done out of order or in pure chaos. I literally had a seller call me a couple weeks ago and said that they wanted to have their house listed next week. It was Friday, and they wanted their house listed next week. And I told her, here's my process, and they wanted it on the market by Thursday. We've talked, we're a good 3 weeks on our scheduling, the way we do it. And I said, I cannot do that and be a good agent for you. And she went on and moved on to somebody else because she wanted it. And I'm like, I haven't even seen your house yet.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked comps. We haven't even gotten the house ready for pictures. We haven't had pictures, and we haven't, I won't do that. And that gets your time back though, because if you're an agent that goes, I'm getting a listing, oh my God, I'll figure this out. You're gonna just, so
Yeah.
time management's huge. Anything else that you were having trouble with in the beginning or still?
Yeah, always the issue is just finding clients. It's always finding the next one. I feel like I had a good little spurt, and then it's kind of starting to tail off. I still am working with a couple people, but it's just, it's always the ongoing struggle of finding clients. And so I think what I found is try to just provide the best service to the clients that you have, and then that will hopefully bear fruit in the future from referrals
Referrals are the
reviews,
best,
and,
yeah.
But you can find anybody, because you used to be a bounty hunter. So for anybody that doesn't know,
Those
he
are
used to be a
wrong
bounty. He used to be a bounty hunter
They don't need a
before
house.
this. So if you got any paper out on you,
Yeah.
you're all right, because he's not doing it anymore. But
I saw the best in my trunk.
Just in
So,
case.
so that we just want to bring you on, get some insight. We definitely want to have more and more people on, just kind of get different perspectives on the industry and kind of keep us sharp, keep us on top of like what's out there in the industry. Of we look at it from our viewpoint quite a bit, and it's like maybe we could be doing more to help other agents with stuff that I just take for granted. That's part of like how I operate anymore.
Well,
I
there's
try to be
times-
an open book here within
Yeah.
the office, but to
But we
anybody.
normally, there's times we've just talked about like things, we're like, I don't know, should we even talk about that?
Yeah.
So if you have something that you'd like us to talk about, you're thinking of issues or concerns or ideas, please let us know and reach out through the website, through the podcast.
Yeah.
We'll find somebody or bring you on and talk to you about it.
I think probably a deep dive into what you were talking about with that purchase agreement. I actually went through something similar on Friday. I submitted or Saturday a purchase agreement, and it was we needed the seller concessions to they were limited on funds, and so it's having that conversation. Okay, we can come at list price and ask for X amount of seller concessions, and then the offer is not as strong, or we can offer a little above list price to kind of counterbalance that, because the list price wasn't the issue. We were approved for enough that it wasn't the issue. It was the money out of pocket.
Yeah.
And so I think doing a deep dive into that to
We could do that.
how to write offers
Yeah.
effectively.
Writing an offer is an art,
Yeah.
and how you present it is an
That
art.
would be a
Big
class. We could schedule a class of something like that, so other people, because just talking one way, people have questions, and I've purchase agreement classes before, and there's questions that you need to go through, but
Well,
we
think about
definitely
it.
could do that.
So one of the ones that we always deal with along those lines is when, not so much now, but especially in the spring market, when they're like, we won't ask for anything above $2,000 or $1,000 on an inspection, and the way it's written matters because unfortunately, I mean,
One
Your-
way's for the seller, one way's for the buyer.
right, but the seller's always going to read it with the intent of like their
Right,
worst
yeah.
nightmare, and they're like, oh well, that means they're just going to ask for everything that's really expensive, when really that was just a number that may have been picked, and it just wasn't conveyed by the selling agent or the buyer's agent.
Well, you write in
Same,
item,
you know.
like items, and what that's where the big, huge change is. And
Right, and it's like, what is the overall tone of the offer, right? And but to me, that really has to be done verbally over the phone once I submit the offer, so I can explain the tone of the offer to the list agent, right? And I think that piece
Yeah.
gets kind of lost.
I think wording really matters because
100%.
is it a single line item, not above
And I'm saying
$2,000,
item,
or
like
is it
item.
all?
Total.
Right.
Yeah.
There's,
Because I've had
put
that.
one word in there and it's
Yeah.
a totally different idea.
So I've had that where we bought a condo and my client said, we won't ask for anything over $3,500. Okay, so I put it in single line item, and then we get the inspection back, and it was, the inspections always have something.
Yeah.
And so my client was like, well, do you think these 3 items will equal that? I said, no, that's not how we put it. We put it single item. So it can't be $1,000, $1,200,
Right.
and now we ask for all of that together. So the wording is very, very important.
It is.
Well, and like you said, one of the things about that is explaining that to the buyers that you're working with, because the wording we know we're going to write is meaning this, but they have to understand, if you tell me to write it differently, why is that totally different for you?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff. So we could do a class on that. That's
And
easy.
we had that conversation, and then it's just after the fact to remind you, then like,
Right, yeah.
this is, yeah.
Because they
You're
don't do it
talking
every
about
day.
this,
day.
yeah. Or vice
So
versa.
let's just get the stats real good
Yeah.
here real quick.
My allergies are bad. I have no idea why. Probably because it's falling, but my nose is trying to drip, and I'm like, I just want to touch it, but I don't want to look like I'm.
Well, now everybody
smearing
knows.
snuff. Oh, just I'm just
Can
be
you
honest
find
about
him
it.
a Kleenex?
No, I'm good. I'm just gonna suffer in silence. Anyways, good.
Anyway, so Carmel, only 46 hit the market, 15 of those pended, and average days on market 19, median was 5. But the interesting thing, we're going to talk about here with each of these cities is that out of the 46 that activated, there were a total of 24 homes that pended last week for any of the houses that had been sitting on the market. So 50% of our inventory was sucked up in 7 days. And that seems to be the trend that we're starting to see, and we're starting to actually put notes on as well here that we don't normally or have not been doing. So active homes on the market in Carmel, 194. Sold in the past 30 days, 120. That's showing another area where we are just literally just getting rid of everything that's on the market. So days on market for the past 30 days was 19 and 5, exactly the same as the past 7 days. So we're staying steady. So then in Westfield, 53 hit the market. 9 of those that just listed were pended. 33 pended in Westfield in the past 7 days, which was 53 active, so over half. Then there's 263 active, 143 sold, 50% of the inventory in 30 days. And then 34 days on the market is their average, and 11 is their median, and that's staying about the same for 7 days as well. So that's kind of evened out. In Zionsville, 9 hit the market, 5 of those 9 pended, but 16 total pended last 7 days. So almost.
-7 inventory.
yeah. And the average.
Scienceville's always like that.
I know, but they're
Yeah.
getting worse.
It's getting worse, yeah.
26 days on the market, 15 average. 26 average, 15 more median. So they're taking up on their days on market too with no inventory. 69 are currently active. 35 sold in the past 30 days, so half there. 13 days in the past 30 days is average. 4 is the median. So it's actually coming. The 30 days is so much lower than the past 7, so they're actually slowing down.
It's getting better. Yeah, it's getting worse technically.
Yeah, it's getting worse.
Yeah. Fishers. It's just interesting. 22 went on the market, and 16 are still active. 6 of them pended, but 21 pended throughout the week, right? So we have 16 days on average. 16 days on market average, but the median is 8. There's 138 active on the market. Noblesville was 22 went on the market last week. 17 are still active. 5 pended, which sounds like nothing, like
Right,
5 out of it. But 21 pended in Noblesville, right? Same, basically almost the same stats for Fishers and Noblesville, except for Noblesville has less active. They have 116 total, and their days on market is actually higher. It's 35 actual is the days on market average, but the median is 19, which is a little bit higher. But when I was going through it, specifically in Noblesville, there was a whole lot that pended. That I saw a May listing pinned. I saw some June and July listings pinned. I saw a lot of August listings pinned. And so this inventory is clearing out. And so you've got some of these that were sitting 90 days, 120 days. And how much is that playing into this 35 days on market?
Well, that's why we always say the average compared to the median,
Right.
because it is those old outliers. But in regards to that, with the houses being sold, you're saying that we're lower. Like, so you had, let's just say 25 activated and 5 pended. It's because our days on market have gone above 7,
Right,
and we're
that's all.
looking at 7. So it's not looking at, they're not bad stats. We've just gone up and
I bet if we switched the podcast to bi-weekly, which we're not going to do, and did the stats bi-weekly, they would look like the stats when we were doing them every single week in May. Like that's just what it would come down to.
Yeah,
right?
but we're trying to dive into today's market, because this market changes so fast.
It does.
I mean, it's never. I've been doing this almost 16 years or something, but never was any 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years like 6 markets in one.
Yeah.
It was like just the same.
But we're dealing with this. When you look at these numbers, I am at best gaining single digits inventory every week, or swinging negative single digits, right? So it's just kind of staying in this same place, and it's kind of trending negative as far as like actual inventory. We're going back down. So like if I look back, 3 and 4 weeks ago, I was up in the 130s on inventory, and now I'm down into 116.
Well, and the other thing we were talking about before we started is, it's almost October, so we're
seasonal a little bit.
Well,
even though it's
I know it's seasonal, but that just shows that we are already trending really far down, and we're getting ready to go into our quietest months of the season if we are going to be seasonal.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So are we going to really not have any inventory over the holidays when there's usually kind of some, but we're already seeing this?
And then if rates go down the way they're predicting,
Oh, there we go, the other way.
it's
That's gonna be the
horrible.
7th. That's gonna be the 7th market in 2
It's
days.
It's gonna be over list price. It's just, I feel bad for people, but I would do it now. I'm not just saying that because I'm an agent. I'm saying it because, I am saying
I
it
would
because I'm an
buy
agent.
now.
But yeah,
Well, for sure,
when you
I
look
would
at the
buy right now.
stats, I just feel like we're on the eve of something like 2021 again, 2020.
Oh, I do too.
It's,
You can only imagine what's gonna happen if all the buyers who are not like doing it, they don't wanna be in the market right now. We know why. It's interest rates. As soon as the interest rates go down, the buyers are gonna be, I'm ready. The other thing we have with interest rates going down is now the sellers who are at 2.9, 3.5 in their interest rates, they're now ready to sell. So we're gonna have more inventory and more buyers. We're gonna get super busy. But the main thing about that is the buyers are going to be paying over list price again, and they're gonna have 7, 8, 10 offers. You're competing, all that's gonna come back. So that's why we keep saying it's a buyer's time right now. Do it now. Why you can ask for inspection items, when you can, maybe get a concession for, and do an FHA or whatever. But buyers,
it's hard though. You lose buying power with interest rates. But I think the problem we'll have when it pivots is because inflation has been high, and a lot of people have lost liquidity. People won't have the liquidity to fight at the beginning of that.
Right.
I just don't, like, where is that? It's gone.
right?
Yeah.
Everything has gone up in price, so I don't know if people will have the liquidity. You're just gonna have 30 offers at list. I don't know if you're gonna have 30,000 over, because I don't know if people are gonna have that because of what the past 2 years has looked like.
Right. Yeah.
I do think there's gonna be an influx of people who are now coming back to the market to sell the house that they bought that they weren't really crazy about. They just bought it because they got the good interest rate, and so they have the equity in that home. Because right now they kind of feel trapped. It's like, well, I bought this house because it's what I could get, and I got a good rate on it, but I don't want to trade this 2.5%, 3% for an 8%.
Right.
And so once those rates come down, it's like, well, I can trade a 3 for a 5,
Right.
or a 3 for 5.5, and then they have that equity. So
But the buyers also in today's market need to understand that you can always get your new interest rate and, what is that called?
Recast.
Refinance.
Depends on which one. Yeah,
Well, yeah, you can
refi or
recast,
recast,
refinance,
whatever.
that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Or
And I know
sure.
there's lenders out there who are offering a free refinance after the rates go
Yes, a
down.
lot of them are.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 So.
Well, good. This is
Yeah, well,
great.
thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. Go ahead and tell people how they can get a hold of you. And
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys having me. It was an honor. Kyle Baker with FC Tucker. My cell phone number is 317-315-7324. Kyle.baker at talktotucker.com.
Awesome. Shelly Walters with FC Tucker at Shelly Walters Realty Group, and my cell phone's 317-201-2601.
and I'm Kyle Morris with Morris Property Group and FC Tucker, and my number is 317-649-5122.
Thanks. See you next week.
Thanks.